In episode 165 of Fresh Air at 5, you're going to hear a few podcasts that I've listened to and my thoughts on those. One of them is cell phones and how cell phones, wow, what a distraction. And look at me, I'm talking on my cell phone. But you know what I'm doing on my cell phone? I'm creating. And I have systems in place for myself that I make sure that it's not a distraction all the time. All right, other things that are going on. There's a way to take care of yourself and get out the door confidently at the end of the work week with Truth for Teachers, with Angela Watson, and some other fantastic episodes in here. So take a listen. Take a look at the playlist that's here, because that'll help you listen to all the things that I have listened to myself this week. It's the Spotify playlist. Link is in the show notes. All right, have a great day. Talk to you soon, and we'll see you next week for episode 166 of Fresh Air at 5. Bye-bye.
This is Brittany Blackwell, host of the Resilient Teacher Podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, along with this podcast. Each show on the network is independently owned, and the views expressed may not represent those of other podcasts. For the best education podcasts, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter, coming to you every week from Abbotsford, which is about 45 minutes east of Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to get some fresh air by walking about my neighborhood, which is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Stolo people, the Simath First Nation and Mathwee First Nation. I consume podcast content while I walk, then reflect on this content in an unedited video, which I post on my X, formerly known as Twitter, channel every day. This podcast is the collection of the audio taken from those daily selfie videos over the course of a week, Monday to Friday. So let's jump into my listening and learning this past week. Hey PLN, it is April 2, 2024. Welcome to April. Wowzers, man, we are moving through the school year and just coming off of spring break. I had a really good spring break. I went to Spring Q, as if you're paying attention here on Twitter, you'll know that, or to my two recent podcast episodes, you'll know I went to Spring Q in California, met some amazing people, learned some amazing things. And now it's time to go back and implement some of my learning. I am not actually super excited about going to school today. You know, it's hard to go back after you've been away. I'm going to just be honest about that. It's true. But over the break, I learned a lot of things. I did get some rest. I went to bed early. I went fishing with a buddy, and we did some early spring fishing, with a couple of buds, and it was good to get outside and do some nature. All right, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to episode 96 of Evolving with Gratitude, and Lainey brings us an episode where she talks about, does flourishing mean we are constantly in bloom? Talking about our well-being, talking about a positive attitude, talking about a positive mindset, and all the things that go along with flourishing in our lives. She brings up two articles that came out in 2021 in April, I believe it was, in the New York Times, that talked about dormancy and also languishing in our society as COVID was going on. And it's interesting to see the ebb and flow and how much we have our cycles. Flourishing has a necessary part of dormancy, of rest, of winter rest. And we're just coming out of winter, and you should see our garden here. It's just erupting, and it's going to be flourishing soon, but not yet. All right, Lainey, thanks so much, and I appreciate you very much. Have a fabulous day, and take a listen to Lainey's episode 96. One more thing for April 2, 2024. It was a privilege last week on Monday, March 25th, to get together for lunch with some other podcasters here in the lower mainland of British Columbia. We went to Fort Langley and we had lunch together. I did mention this on my podcast last week as I got them to each tell us about their podcasts. But today, on episode 262 of Teachers on Fire, we get to see a conversation that happened amongst the four of us where we talk about making the most of our spring break and what it means to us. So you can go and take a listen to the audio of our conversation on episode 262 of Teachers on Fire podcast with Tim Cavey. You can also go into his YouTube channel and watch the video of us talking. It's just a little more visually appealing than just listening, but it's the same content. And you can go there, and Tim does a great job of putting together that video. In this episode of Teachers on Fire, we hear from Lauren McLean, who is a teacher from Port Moody, British Columbia, who has a classroom and she teaches outdoors. And that's the name of her podcast. She brings us, some insights about being outside with her children and her own kids and how that makes an impact in our lives, in their lives. We have another person on the podcast, Tim Stevenson. He talks about his podcast and his time as he's been away over spring break and learning about beaches and about, our coastline here in British Columbia. And his podcast is Science 360. Go take a listen to Tim's podcast because he's got some great content for science teachers, even just for general interest of learning about the world around us. And then there's Tim Cavey, the man who's got this podcast. Thanks, Tim, so much for all that you do and bringing it together for lunch. Okay, talk to you. Bye. The last thing for April 2, 2024. All right, since I started recording, I feel like going to school a little bit more. The fresh air does help. Getting some kilometers into your feet helps. It is about moving your body and getting outside, and that does help. As my friend Tim Stevenson talks about on Science 360, about wellness and about the chemicals that are in the air around us when we are outside in nature. Yes, I'm on the street, but there's nature all around where I am. I live in a beautiful green space, so that is helpful. All right, this morning I want to give a shout out to a new listener to Fresh Air 5, Jeremy Jorgensen. And it was last week as I was scrolling through my notifications that I came across a video recording on Twitter, which was a reflection about Jeremy going out for a ruck. That's a new term for me, Jeremy, after they had a very nice Good Friday brunch, I think it was, that his wife made, and he appreciated that, and then went for a walk outside in the woods along a road. Looked like it was very snowy where you were, and then you were talking about how you had come across Fresh Air 5. I want to give a shout out to you and say thank you so much for reaching out, because that lifted my spirits as a podcaster. I do this, and sometimes I wonder if anybody's listening. It's nice to hear that you're listening, and also nice to hear that you're new to this thing called podcast listening. So, what's going on with podcast listening? Well, it's a way of getting information into your head, and it's another medium that we have available to us. There is so much professional development available, and by listening to my podcast, you can get some of that yourself. And also I point people in directions to learn about other things, ed tech and such. So thanks, Jeremy, so much. I hope this encourages you, and be in touch. Okay, talk to you soon. Okay, bye. APLN April 3, 2024. Out for Fresh Air 5. It's plus 4 degrees Celsius. It's later The sun is on its way up and the sky is getting light. Like that. I sure do. I like that a lot. All right. This morning, I listened to episode 164 of the Chan Pav Show. As Chan Pav tell us and share with us the launch of their new book, Amplifying Teachers, the Stories of Teachers. That's probably not the title. You got to go to the show notes for this episode to get that exactly. I apologize, Chan Pav, for getting it wrong. I should have looked that up before I pressed record, but here I am. I'm recording right now in the live way that I do. And yes, I'll put the title here in the video. That's what I'll do. And I will get it right in the show notes when I put your, episode into my show notes. All right. Also, you guys were recognized as the 2023 Educational Podcast Series winners. Congratulations to you on that. That is fantastic. You guys are rocking it and doing a great job. And I like listening to your show. So I'm a supporter over here in the West. And yes, that is fantastic. Big truck. This morning as I'm walking, I listened to your episode. And the content of your episode, the title was Cellphones. So I had an idea in my head of where the conversation was going to go because you work in Ontario. And I'm aware that Ontario put some legislation in to give teachers some authority over this from the government level. But they pushed it down to the board level and for school boards and schools to manage their own exact personal relationship with cell phones, which is happening here in British Columbia. The Minister of Education back in early January put some legislation forward that says we're going to ban cell phones in classrooms. Oh, I'm running out of time. I'll be right back. Hang on. One more thing for April 3, 2024. A correction to the episode number from Chan Pav as they're talking about cell phones. It is episode 134 called Cell Phones. Yes, there you go. So I corrected that. I got it. As they're talking about cell phones, I was saying, what I was just saying was that in British Columbia, we have now had legislation put down that says that cell phones can be banned in classrooms, but it needs to be decided exactly what that looks like from the classroom level and the school level. And so I have mixed feelings about this because at moments a cell phone is a valuable tool in my classroom, but at very few moments. And providing students with devices that they can use as opposed to their own devices, and us teaching them how to be creative on their own devices compared to the school supplied, second generation iPads that are, lacking in the ability to do some of the current things that cell phones can do. That's a limitation. But as I'm listening to the Chan Pav Show, Che talks about the outliers in the data of, wow, I got this fantastic project and I let students use their cell phones, and there was so many that didn't get it done that said they were going to on their cell phones, as opposed to those that didn't use their cell phones and use the school supplied WeVideo. I'm thinking about right now maybe dropping our subscription to WeVideo in my school because we don't use it a lot and it costs a lot of money. But having no cell phones in the classrooms, what's that do to access to technology? You guys talk a lot about everything from Chromebooks to iPads and the distraction and the mental health. And there are great thoughts about this. So I encourage you to go listen to episode 134 of the Chan Pav Show and decide for yourself. Thanks, guys. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, it is Friday, April 5, 2024. I blinked, and where did the work week go? It's gone. A lot of things happened. It was a short week. We had Monday off for in lieu of of Easter, and so I came back to work on Tuesday to 100 assignments sitting in my inbox, about 45 messages in my message system, and I needed to teach middle school that day. And so I taught. The week went along, the day went along. We had a meeting in the afternoon, back to it on Wednesday morning, doing some teaching in our elementary, and so on, and it just flew by. Bang, here we are, Friday morning. I'm out for my walk, looking at how do I end this well today. And so as I'm walking, I listened to an episode of Truth for Teachers that came out on the 31st of March with Angela Watson. And Angela brings us a presentation from an online summit that she runs called the 40-Hour Teacher Work Week Club, or very similar to that. But you can go check it out in the show notes for this episode. And she has on guest June Link, who talks about how she is ruthlessly streamlining her systems and work habits using 5 principles that are part of the 40-Hour Work Week Club to make more efficiency in her classroom and to get things done within the contract hours. It's called Clock Out Confidently, how to get things done in your 40-hour work week. So thank you, June, for your thoughts. Gives me something to think about as I'm an online teacher, and I work in a different kind of space than a regular classroom teacher, but still, there are certain things that I could probably do to provide for myself. She effectively was her own sub by changing some of the ways she engaged her students and gave them things to do so she could get more things done in her class time, in her daytime. All right, that's all I got for now. Thanks you. It's a short week this week. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's like a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find some other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific episode podcast titles and episode numbers in the show notes, which are only a click or swipe away for your learning convenience. I've also started to put together a Spotify playlist of each of the episodes so that you can also take a listen to those specifically, and the link to that playlist is in the show notes. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Brian Carr, BRYONCAR, or at Fresh Air at 5. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can be found on the Educational Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day. Get some fresh air before the day is out and take care of yourself because you are worth it.